The host wanted to corner Sylvester Stallone, but instead he walked straight into his own downfall. What was supposed to be a routine interview turned into an unforgettable lesson in resilience, strength, and the real meaning of toughness. The studio was alive with anticipation. Bright lights shone down on the sleek stage, reflecting off the polished floor. The audience murmured in low voices, some leaning forward in their seats, others clutching their phones, ready to record. They had come expecting entertainment, maybe even a takedown of a Hollywood icon. They had no idea they were about to witness something far bigger. Across from Stallone sat Oliver Grant, a sharp-dressed, well-groomed talk show host with a reputation for pushing his guests into uncomfortable corners. He had built his career on calculated takedowns, setting up questions like traps, waiting for his guests to stumble. Tonight, his target was none other than Sylvester Stallone. Grant leaned forward, flashing a practiced smile. "Mr. Stallone," he began smoothly, "you've long been a symbol of rugged masculinity. But in today's world, don't you think that definition of strength is a bit outdated?" A few in the audience chuckled. Others nodded along, eager to hear how the legendary action star would respond. Stallone, relaxed in his chair, exhaled through his nose and gave Grant a slow, amused look. "So, you're asking if being strong is a bad thing now?" Grant smirked, adjusting his cufflinks. "I think the idea of toughness can be problematic when it discourages vulnerability. Don't you think the world has moved past the strongman trope?" Silence. A few seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. Then Stallone let out a deep, rumbling laugh, the kind that came from deep in his chest. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You're serious?" he asked, shaking his head. "You think toughness is a problem?" Grant straightened his tie, his confidence unwavering. "I think it can be. In a world that values emotional intelligence, maybe it's time we redefine what it means to be strong." Stallone tilted his head slightly, studying the man in front of him. Then, his voice dropped, steady and deliberate. "If someone broke into your house tonight, do you want a tough guy in there to protect you? Or do you want someone who wants to sit down and talk about their feelings?" A ripple went through the audience. A few claps, a few gasps. Grant opened his mouth, but Stallone wasn't finished. "Toughness isn't about throwing punches or being the loudest in the room," Stallone continued. "It's about standing your ground when life knocks you down. It's about protecting your family, about having discipline, about working hard. And if you think the world doesn't need that anymore—" He shook his head. "Man, I don't know what world you're living in." Grant chuckled, though there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. "Fair enough," he said, shifting slightly. "But let's talk about your movies. Hollywood has long glorified violence as the only solution to problems. Don't you think that sends the wrong message?" Stallone didn't miss a beat. "Hollywood glorifies a lot of things," he said. "You ever see a movie where a guy saves the world by filing paperwork?" The audience erupted in laughter, this time louder. Even a few members of Grant's own production crew smirked. But the host wasn't giving up just yet. He flipped through his notes. "Let's talk influence," he said. "You've built a career playing characters who solve problems with their fists. Don't you feel a responsibility to promote a different kind of hero? One that aligns with today's progressive ideals?" Stallone stretched, his shoulders rolling back. "First of all," he said, "I make movies. Movies ain't real. You know that, right?" The audience chuckled again, but Stallone kept going. "I mean, last time I checked, I never actually went 15 rounds with Apollo Creed. Never single-handedly took down an army with a knife. Never ran up those steps in Philly and fixed the whole world's problems. It's entertainment." Grant smirked. "Yes, but movies shape culture. Kids grow up watching Rambo and Rocky. Shouldn't they be learning that violence isn't the answer?" Stallone leaned in. "You ever actually watch Rocky?" he asked. "That movie wasn't about fighting. It was about getting back up when life knocks you down. And Rambo, that guy just wanted to be left alone. If people had just let him walk through town, there wouldn't have been a movie." The audience clapped louder this time. Grant's jaw tightened. He wasn't winning them over. He needed to regain control. "Okay," Grant said, lowering his voice. "Let's talk about real life. We live in a time when people are questioning what it means to be strong. Some say your version of toughness is part of the problem, that it divides people instead of bringing them together. Stallone studied him for a moment, then spoke, his voice calm. You ever meet a firefighter? Grant frowned. Excuse me? A firefighter, a cop, a military vet, hell, a single mom working two jobs to keep food on the table. You ever talk to them? You think toughness is their problem? Grant said nothing. Stallone shook his head. No, man. Their toughness is what keeps the world running. The real problem is people acting like strength is the enemy. Weakness ain't a virtue. Strength, with control, that's what keeps people safe. The audience was hooked. Grant shifted in his seat, but Stallone wasn't done. You want to know the real problem? Stallone asked. It's not toughness. It's people who talk about toughness like it's dangerous while living in a world protected by tough people. He gestured to Grant. You sit here in your nice suit, in your safe studio, asking if toughness is outdated. But if things ever really go sideways, you're going to be real glad there are still guys like me around. Silence. Then from the back of the room, someone whistled. The audience clapped. Grant had another question ready, but he could feel it. The room wasn't on his side anymore. What started as an interview had turned into something much bigger. And outside the studio, the internet was already catching fire.